Also, everyone, speaking of that, the public will soon be able to watch at least one of Donald Trump's criminal trials. A judge ruling that cameras will be allowed in court for the former president's Georgia election interference trial. Trump pleaded not guilty on charges of racketeering and conspiracy. And joining me now is California Congressman Ted Lieu, vice chair of the House Democratic Caucus. Congressman, before I go any further with our discussion, did you get a chance to cross paths over the years at all with Governor, Secretary, Congressman, Ambassador Bill Richardson?
Thank you, Alex, for your question. I never had the opportunity to serve with Secretary Richardson, but he was an extraordinary public servant. My heart goes out to the friends and family of Secretary Richardson, and history is going to remember him well.
Will indeed. Let's move on to our discussion as planned about Donald Trump. Tell me, how significant is it that the Georgia trial will be televised? What kind of impact is that going to have?
I support trials being televised. They are funded with taxpayer dollars. It is a third branch of government. The judiciary should not operate in secrecy. I also think Supreme Court proceedings should be televised, and I'm a big believer in more government transparency at all levels of government.
Well, look, there have been a lot of growing calls for Trump's federal trials to be televised. How could Georgia impact those efforts? Is there any chance that it would happen, federally speaking, or are the rules that govern that very strictly followed? So there's no chance.
Individual federal courts could just decide to televise trials if they want to, and I urge the Judicial Council to put out a policy of having trials be televised. Again, this is an entire branch of government. They should be transparent. They should not act as if they are operating in secrecy. And I, for the life of me, do not understand why Supreme Court proceedings aren't televised.
Yeah, that is something that has been up for discussion as well. What about in the annual financial disclosure that was released this week? Speaking of Supreme Court, Justice Clarence Thomas disclosed the details of expensive trips paid for by Republican megadonor and billionaire Harlan Crow. But it comes after a series of ProPublica reports earlier this year revealing the extent of Thomas's relationship with Crow. What is your takeaway from this disclosure, and do you expect any actual ethics rule changes coming to the High Court?
Justice Clarence Thomas should resign. He has dishonored himself and the United States Supreme Court. It's not like he accepted one expensive watch.
Oh, goodness. That looks like the Skype connection has gone down for us. We're certainly going to try to get that back. There are more questions we would like to ask the Congressman Lieu. Happy to report California Congressman Ted Lieu is back with us. We have the connection. So I'd ask you to review again what you were saying about Justice Clarence Thomas and the fact that the financial disclosure that was released this week had the details of the trips that were paid for by Harlan Crow. Again, your thoughts on that and what he should do going forward.
Justice Clarence Thomas should resign because it's not like he accepted just one gift he shouldn't have. This was millions of dollars of gifts from a conservative billionaire who did not know Justice Thomas until after he became a Supreme Court justice. He took all these trips that he should have disclosed. He did not. And I also know, why did he file this filing? It's because he knows he has to follow the law. Congress requires everyone to make these filings. It also requires him to have disclosed private jet travel, which he did not. He violated the law in that instance. And members of Congress, including me, have called on the Department of Justice to go ahead and investigate Justice Thomas for violating the law. I also note this billionaire had interest before the Supreme Court. He is a board member of AEI, which writes legal briefs before the Supreme Court.
Do you expect there to be ethics rules changes to the Supreme Court? How challenging would it be to implement some?
Every single federal employee in our government at the executive branch, legislative branch, and judicial branch has to follow ethics rules, except for the 9 people on the U.S. Supreme Court. I don't know who they think they are, but it's one reason when you look at public opinion polling, they are at the lowest levels of approval in recorded history. I urge the Supreme Court to adopt a set of ethics principles and guidelines and actually follow them. Alternatively, Congress has a Supreme Court ethics bill, and I urge that Kevin McCarthy put that on the floor so we can put it into law.
All right, Congressman Ted Lieu, I'm glad we got you hooked back up. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your holiday weekend.